Captain Mark Davis adjusted his tie nervously as he stepped onto the gleaming platform. The surface shimmered like liquid silver, reflecting the pale green sky of Zythera, the alien planet humanity had just made first contact with. He had trained for this mission for years, yet nothing had prepared him for the sheer strangeness of the moment. Around him, aliens of every imaginable shape and size milled about, their colors shifting and flickering like living rainbows. Tentacles waved politely, eyes blinked in patterns he could not decipher, and appendages that looked like glass rods waved in greeting. The welcoming ceremony was in full swing, though Mark barely noticed. He scanned the crowd, trying to keep his composure, when he suddenly felt a strange weight in his chest, a feeling of being singled out. His eyes drifted to a group of 3 aliens who were huddled together, whispering in a language that sounded like a blend of chimes and sighs. And then, from among them, a young alien girl stepped forward. Her skin shimmered in soft shades of violet and gold, and her eyes were unusually large, glowing with a gentle intelligence. Mark froze, not because of fear, but because she was staring directly at him. Not looking around, not at anyone else. Just him. The crowd continued its bustling, polite chaos, but it felt like the world had narrowed down to the space between them. Without warning, she turned to her companions and spoke in rapid Zytheran, a language Mark could not understand. Then she pointed at him with a graceful, delicate gesture. "That's my husband," she said. Mark blinked. His mouth opened, closed, and opened again. He cleared his throat. "Excuse me?" he asked, but the girl had already turned back to smile at him. A small, confident smile, the kind that seemed to say, "You belong here, and we both know it." Around him, the crowd froze. Some of the aliens tilted their heads. Others emitted soft whistles that Mark guessed were a form of laughter or surprise. He looked at the human diplomats nearby, only to find them just as confused, some covering their faces with gloved hands to hide laughter, others whispering furiously into communication devices. A voice in his ear crackled. "Captain Davis, this is Ambassador Chen. Do you understand what she said?" "Not a word," Mark admitted. His pulse quickened. "Does this mean she—" He stopped, unsure how to even phrase it without sounding ridiculous. "Does she mean that literally?" Chen chuckled. "Unknown. Zytheran terms are complicated. Just go with it. Stay calm." Before Mark could reply, 2 of the girl's companions stepped forward, extending limbs in gestures that clearly indicated he should follow. The girl's smile widened, and she lightly tapped one of her companions, who nodded and motioned for Mark to walk with them. "What is happening?" he muttered under his breath. "You are special," Chen said, though even she sounded unsure. Apparently, Mark followed, careful not to trip over the smooth, reflective floor, and entered a smaller courtyard where the aliens seemed to gather for private meetings. Here, the light shifted to a warmer, more golden hue, and the strange sounds of the crowd outside became distant hums. The girl, whose name he would later learn was Lyra, stopped and gestured for him to sit. He hesitated, but the companions gave him patient, expectant looks. "Sit," Lyra repeated, pointing to a low platform that resembled a wide cushion floating slightly above the ground. "Please." Mark sat, feeling utterly out of place, while the 2 companions hovered behind her like attendants. He noticed subtle gestures, an exchange of signals with Lyra, a tilt of an appendage here, a quiet chime there that suggested a complex system of communication he could not yet comprehend. Lyra tilted her head, studied him, and then spoke in a slower, more deliberate voice, as if trying to make him understand. "You are clever," she said. "Different from others. That is why I said, my husband." Mark swallowed. "Clever? Different?" He tried to smile, though it probably looked more like a grimace. "I don't know what you mean." Her smile didn't falter. She waved her hands gracefully, and a small holographic display appeared between them. It showed a series of glowing symbols, shifting patterns, and what appeared to be diagrams of Earth. A faint outline of a human figure appeared in the middle, labeled with what Mark assumed was his name in Zytheran. "This," Mark said, pointing. "That's me?" "Yes," Lyra said, her tone gentle but firm. "You see things we do not. You think differently. You will help us, protect us, guide us." Mark leaned back, trying to absorb the words. Protect? Guide? He had been trained for diplomacy. But nothing in his instruction manual had prepared him for being chosen by an alien child in a society he didn't understand. One of her companions stepped forward, extending a translucent arm that glowed softly. It seemed to be a gesture of welcome or inclusion. Mark hesitated, then shook it carefully. The touch sent a strange, warm sensation up his arm, like holding a softly glowing crystal. Lyra's eyes twinkled. "Do not be afraid. You are safe. You are ours." Mark's mind raced. "Ours?" he asked cautiously. "Your people are important," Lyra said simply. "And now, you are important too." The simplicity of her statement struck him. Amid the flashing lights, shifting colors, and alien sounds, she was offering something he had not expected. Trust. Not politeness, not diplomacy, not the careful balance of formalities, but trust. Mark exhaled slowly. He had faced hostile alien species before in simulations, but never this, the feeling of being singled out for something completely unexpected, completely incomprehensible, yet inherently flattering. He looked at her and, despite the strangeness, felt a flicker of understanding. She believed in him. Suddenly, a sound drew his attention, a chorus of musical tones coming from the main courtyard. He realized that outside, the crowd was still buzzing, whispering in their alien language. He guessed that rumors were spreading. Somehow, the declaration of husband had created a spectacle. "Do they all know now?" he asked Lyra quietly. "They know what I said," she replied, "and now they watch. But you do not need to fear them. You need only be yourself." Being himself suddenly seemed complicated. He had trained to be calm, to negotiate, to reason, but here, in a culture so alien, every instinct felt inadequate. And yet, he couldn't help but smile back at her. The confidence in her eyes was contagious. "What happens now?" he asked. Lyra stood, motioning for him to rise. She moved gracefully, almost gliding, and led him to another part of the courtyard. Here, there were objects that looked like puzzles, strange machines with shifting geometric patterns, and panels that reacted to touch. "Tests," she said. "You must show that you can think as we think. You must prove that you belong." Mark blinked. "Tests? Like school tests?" She laughed, a sound like a soft wind chime. "No. Not like yours. Ours are different. You will see." For the next hour, Mark found himself engaged in challenges unlike anything he had ever encountered. He was asked to solve puzzles that relied on intuition rather than logic, to navigate mazes that changed shape under his feet, and to cooperate with Lyra in a series of tasks that required both speed and creativity. He stumbled, laughed at his own mistakes, and occasionally made progress in ways that surprised even himself. Throughout it all, Lyra watched. Her eyes sparkled with approval whenever he found an unexpected solution or took a risk that seemed illogical but effective. By the end, he realized that the challenges were not about right or wrong, they were about adaptability, courage, and creativity. Finally, she stopped the last challenge and turned to him, her glow brighter in the golden light of the courtyard. You are ready, she said. Ready to be my husband. Mark laughed nervously. I'm still not sure I understand what that means. You will, she replied. In time, you will see. And for the first time since stepping onto Zethera, Mark felt a strange sense of calm. Confusion, yes, but also excitement. Adventure, yes, but also purpose. Somehow, in this alien world, amid incomprehensible customs and dazzling colors, he had been chosen not for strength or skill alone, but for being human, creative, adaptable, persistent, and perhaps a little unpredictable. Lyra reached out her hand. Mark hesitated for a moment, then took it, and in that simple gesture, he understood that he was no longer merely a visitor. He was part of something bigger, something new, something that might just redefine humanity's place in the galaxy. He smiled back at her, and for the first time, the alien world didn't seem so strange at all. Mark awoke to the soft golden light of Zethera filtering through the translucent walls of the chamber where he had been shown to rest. The room was simple but elegant, with floating platforms instead of chairs and glowing shapes that shifted slowly across the walls. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, still trying to process everything that had happened the previous day. Lyra's words and gestures echoed in his mind. You are ready. You belong. He wasn't sure what that meant yet, but somehow, he felt both nervous and excited. As he stepped out of the chamber, he found Lyra waiting for him. She floated lightly, her violet and gold skin shimmering in the soft morning light. She didn't speak at first, simply watching him with her large, intelligent eyes. Good morning, Mark said awkwardly, feeling like a schoolboy. Lyra's smile widened. Good morning. Today, you will learn more about our ways. You will learn why I chose you. Mark nodded, unsure what to expect. He followed her through winding pathways that seemed to shift subtly as they moved. Buildings rose and fell in fluid, organic shapes, and plants of impossible colors glowed softly along the paths. Zethera felt alive in a way that made every step feel like it carried meaning. Finally, they arrived at a large plaza where dozens of Zytherans had gathered. Unlike the day before, the crowd was calm and organized, as if waiting for something. Lyra turned to him. These are my friends, she said. They will teach you. Mark blinked. Teach me what? Everything, Lyra said simply. Our games, our puzzles, our ways. You must understand us to belong. The first Zytheran to approach him was tall and slender, with limbs that bent in several places like flexible rods. Its skin was a pale turquoise, and its eyes glimmered with curiosity. It extended a hand, and Mark took it carefully. I am Tira, the alien said in deliberate, measured tones. I will show you the first test. 2. Mark followed Tira to a nearby platform. On the surface were a series of geometric shapes that shifted and rotated slowly. Lyra floated beside him. The first test is simple, she said. You must organize the shapes into harmony. Not as you think it should be, but as the shapes wish to be. Mark frowned. Shapes? Wish? Lyra nodded. Everything here has intent. You must feel it, not just see it. He hesitated, then reached out and touched one of the glowing shapes. It shifted under his fingers, humming softly. At first, Mark tried to arrange them logically, lining them up and matching colors, but the shapes resisted, slipping out of place. He realized that logic alone would not work. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the soft vibrations and movements of the shapes. Slowly, he began to sense a pattern, a rhythm. His hands moved, nudging, rotating, and letting go. After several minutes, the shapes aligned perfectly, glowing brighter as they settled. Tira stepped back, its eyes gleaming. You have learned quickly, it said. Mark breathed a sigh of relief. That Actually worked. Lyra clapped her hands gently, a sound like wind chimes. Clever. You do not see things as others do. That is why I chose you. The next challenge was different. Lyra led him to a room filled with intricate pathways suspended in the air. Platforms floated above a soft, glowing mist. He was supposed to cross from one end to the other without touching the mist below. But the platforms moved in response to weight and pressure. Mark watched as Scytherin navigate it gracefully, leaping and floating effortlessly. When it was his turn, he realized that brute force or hesitation would fail. He took a deep breath and remembered something simple from Earth. Sometimes, the easiest path is not the direct one. He moved carefully, testing each platform before committing. Sometimes he had to step back, sometimes sideways, adjusting to the movement. By combining observation with instinct, he reached the end without falling once. Lyra's eyes sparkled with pride. You think differently, and that is your strength. You are not like us. That is why you belong. Mark smiled, feeling a growing sense of confidence. He had expected to struggle endlessly with alien customs, but somehow, his human intuition was allowing him to succeed. For the next several hours, Lyra introduced him to more challenges. Some were physical, like navigating the floating gardens filled with moving plants that reacted to touch. Others were mental, like deciphering patterns in shifting light displays or coordinating tasks with multiple Scytherins at once. Mark stumbled and failed sometimes, but each failure taught him something new. By the end of the day, he realized that these tests were not just for amusement. They were training him to see the world differently, to understand the alien perspective, and to build trust through cooperation. During a brief break, Lyra sat beside him on a floating platform, dangling her legs over the edge. "Do you like our ways?" she asked. Mark shrugged. "It's strange, but I think I understand more now. It's like everything is alive here, not just the people but the place itself." Lyra smiled. "Yes, Scythera is alive, and we must protect it. That is why you are important. That is why I chose you." Mark felt a strange warmth at her words. Not pride. Exactly. But the feeling that he mattered, that his skills and perspective could make a difference. He had trained for space missions, for diplomacy, for emergencies, but never for being personally chosen by an alien culture. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden ripple of movement across the plaza. Mark looked up to see dozens of Scytherins gathering in a wide circle, their eyes fixed on something he could not yet see. Lyra floated to the center and waved her hands, signaling him to follow. "What is happening?" he asked quietly. "It is a celebration," she said. "A welcoming. But it is also a demonstration. Watch carefully. Learn." Mark watched as Scytherins began to perform coordinated movements, their limbs and appendages creating a fluid dance of light and color. Patterns shifted in the air, glowing trails following each motion. The display was mesmerizing, a combination of art, communication, and celebration. Mark realized that even here, humans would be able to find common ground. Music, rhythm, cooperation, these were universal. Lyra turned to him and whispered, "Soon, you will lead. Soon, you will be a part of this. Some common time. 1.41. 1.41. Enclon stay. 1.41. 1.41. 1.41. 1.41. Mark's eyes widened. "Lead? Me?" She nodded. "Yes. You see things we cannot. You think differently. That is why you are my husband." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "I still don't understand what that means exactly, but I think I'm starting to like it." As the day ended, Lyra guided him back to the chamber where he had slept. The glowing shapes on the walls now pulsed softly in soothing patterns. Mark lay down, exhausted but exhilarated. He realized that he had not only survived the day, but had begun to earn the trust of Zythera's people. More importantly, he had begun to understand why humans, despite being physically weaker, slower, or less graceful, could thrive through creativity, adaptability, and intuition. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought about what Lyra had said. And for the first time, Mark felt that he was ready for whatever Zythera and the galaxy might throw at him next. With soft golden light spilling across the floating gardens and the distant hum of alien life filling the air, Mark stretched and walked toward the plaza, where Lyra was waiting, her violet and gold skin shimmering in the light. "Today," she said, "would be different." "Today," Lyra said, "you will face your first real trial." Mark frowned. "Trial? You mean another test?" She shook her head, her smile serious. "Not a test of skill, a test of trust, teamwork, and courage." Before he could respond, Tira arrived, flanked by 2 other Zytherans. Together, they led Mark to a large dome-shaped structure at the edge of the plaza. The surface shimmered like liquid silver, reflecting the sky above. Inside, the air felt warmer, denser, almost alive. Lyra gestured for him to enter. "Inside, you will see. Remember what you have learned. Use your mind. Use your heart. And do not be afraid." Mark took a deep breath and stepped inside. Immediately, the dome transformed around him. Walls of light rose and fell, shifting like water, and the floor rippled gently under his feet. Shapes moved in intricate patterns, and soft musical tones accompanied their motion. It was mesmerizing, beautiful, and completely disorienting. From the center of the dome emerged a figure unlike any Mark had seen. It was taller than the tallest Zytheran he had met, with skin that shifted constantly in color and texture. Its multiple eyes glowed with intelligence, and its limbs moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost hypnotic. "Welcome, human," it said in a deep, resonant voice. "I am Solith, guardian of this dome. Those who enter must prove themselves worthy, or they cannot leave." Mark swallowed. "Worthy of what?" "Of trust," Solith said. "Of partnership, of being one with Zythera. If you fail, you will not harm us, but you will remain here until you understand." Mark's pulse quickened. He had faced simulations, alien environments, and strange customs, but nothing like this. He glanced at Lyra, who simply nodded. "You can do this," she said softly. "Remember what you have learned. Observe, think, and act." The dome shifted again, revealing 3 platforms hovering above a glowing mist. Each platform displayed different patterns and symbols. Solith's voice echoed in the chamber. "You must cross the platforms and arrange the symbols correctly. Only then will you gain passage." Mark stepped forward cautiously. The first platform responded to his weight, rising gently as he moved. He studied the symbols, geometric shapes, rotating and shifting, their colors changing in complex sequences. At first, he tried to use logic, lining shapes in straight rows. The platform shuddered and tilted dangerously. He stepped back, heart racing. "Not like that," Solith said. "You must feel the patterns. Listen to them." Mark closed his eyes and focused. He remembered the first challenges Lyra had given him, the glowing shapes, the floating gardens. It was not about forcing order, but sensing the flow. Slowly, he lifted his hands and let the shapes guide him. He moved them in patterns that felt natural, not logical. The platform stabilized. Encouraged, he advanced to the second platform. Here, the challenge was different. Moving shapes weren't the problem. Now, the platform itself shifted in response to his movements. One wrong step, and he would fall into the mist. Mark concentrated, adjusting his weight carefully, moving rhythmically, almost dancing with the platform. Step by step, he crossed safely. The third platform presented the final challenge. Several symbols floated in the air, constantly rearranging themselves. He realized he had to coordinate with the others, Tira and the two Zytherans who had accompanied him. Work together. Solith's voice boomed. Mark hesitated. He had never led Zytherans before, and their forms and gestures were still partially unfamiliar. But he remembered Lyra's words. You are different. That is your strength. He raised his hands and began signaling, using simple gestures that mirrored the Zytherans' movements. Slowly, they began to understand him, and together, they shifted the symbols into a harmonious pattern. Lights pulsed as the final piece settled. The dome resonated with a gentle hum, and a doorway of shimmering light appeared ahead. You have passed, Solith said. Its many eyes regarded him with approval. Mark exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief and exhilaration. He had faced something truly alien and emerged successful. Lyra floated beside him, her smile radiant. You did it, she said. You see what humans can do. We may be many, but sometimes one human can think differently and succeed where we struggle. Mark smiled back. I guess being different isn't so bad. Lyra laughed softly. It is our strength, and soon you will see even more. As they exited the dome, a message arrived from the plaza. Another group of Zytherans was waiting, their expressions serious. Lyra guided him toward them. These are the Council of Guides, she explained quietly. They oversee challenges like the one you just faced. Today, they want to see how you interact with us. Socially. Not just physically or mentally. Mark nodded, trying to prepare himself. The council greeted him with a series of gestures and hums. At first, he felt awkward, unsure how to respond. But he remembered the rhythm of the dome, the flow of the shapes, and began to mirror their gestures with careful observation. Slowly, the tension eased. The council began to respond positively, nodding and humming approvingly. One of the council members extended a glowing hand, offering a small object that shimmered like liquid light. Mark took it gently, feeling a strange warmth spreading through his fingers. The council member nodded again, a sign of acceptance. You see, Lyra said as they walked away, humans can adapt in ways even we cannot. You have learned quickly, and that is why you are my husband. Mark laughed softly. I'm still not sure what that really means, but I think I'm beginning to understand. It's not about the word, it's about trust and partnership. Lyra smiled. Exactly. And soon, you will have to use that trust to help others. Mark's curiosity piqued. Help others? How? Lyra glanced back at him, her eyes serious. There are forces beyond Zythera that do not wish us well. You will see soon enough. But remember, your human perspective, your creativity, and your willingness to act are what will make the difference. Mark felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with apprehension. He had trained for crises, but nothing in simulations could prepare him for real alien threats. And yet, for the first time, he felt a spark of confidence. He had already succeeded in challenges that Zytherans themselves struggled with. He had earned their trust, and he had Lyra by his side. The rest of the day passed in a blur of training, observation, and small exercises. Lyra introduced him to Zytheran strategies for problem-solving, teamwork, and defense. Each lesson reinforced a simple truth. Humans had a unique way of thinking, combining intuition, creativity, and adaptability. In situations where rules and patterns seemed rigid, Mark's perspective allowed solutions that Zytherans had never considered. By evening, the plaza was alive with celebration. Zytherans of all forms and colors danced and moved in coordinated patterns, creating a living tapestry of light, sound, and motion. Mark watched in awe, amazed by the beauty and complexity of their culture. Lyra floated to his side. "Tomorrow, you will face something even more challenging," she said. "Not just tests, not just puzzles, but real responsibility." Mark nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had already learned so much, but he knew the journey was far from over. Being Lyra's husband was not a title, it was a call to action, a partnership that required courage, intelligence, and heart. As he watched the sun dip below Zythera's horizon, casting long, golden shadows across the plaza, he realized that his adventure had only just begun. The trials he faced today had prepared him for the unknown, but the future promised even greater challenges. And for the first time, Mark felt ready to meet them not just as a human in an alien world, but as a trusted partner, a bridge between species, and a symbol of what humanity could offer the galaxy. He glanced at Lyra, who was watching the crowd with quiet pride. She turned to him, her glowing eyes meeting his. "Rest tonight," she said softly. "Tomorrow, you will see why humans are needed." Mark nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. He had crossed the dome, won the Council's respect, and begun to understand the meaning behind her words. "I'm ready," he said, more to himself than to her. And for the first time, he truly believed it. The morning air on Zythera carried a strange tension. Mark noticed it the moment he stepped onto the floating walkway leading to the plaza. Normally, the light shimmered softly, plants glowed warmly, and the air buzzed gently with alien music. Today, the glow seemed dimmer, the hum sharper, and an unusual stillness hovered over the gardens. Lyra was waiting for him, her usual cheerful smile replaced by a look of quiet concern. "Something is wrong," she said softly. "You must be ready today, Mark. Today is not just about tests or learning. Today is about action." Mark frowned. "Action? What kind of action?" She did not answer immediately. Instead, she guided him to a higher platform, where the Council of Guides had gathered. Their many eyes shifted nervously, and subtle gestures passed between them. Lyra explained in low tones. "There are forces beyond Zythera that threaten our home. Some creatures from the neighboring sectors have learned of our existence and seek to control our energy sources." Mark's pulse quickened. He had prepared for alien diplomacy and cultural challenges, but the idea of a real threat creatures actively targeting Zythera was something else entirely. "So, what do you want me to do?" "Help us," Lyra said simply. "Your perspective is different. You see solutions we cannot. That is why I chose you." Before Mark could ask further, a loud ripple of energy swept through the plaza. Holographic projections appeared, showing a fleet of strange, dark vessels hovering near Zythera's borders. They were unlike anything he had seen, jagged, shadowed forms that pulsed with energy and moved in unpredictable patterns. The council spoke quickly in their musical language, and Lyra translated as best she could. "They are preparing to enter Zythera's atmosphere. If we do not act, they will take control of our floating gardens, our energy sources, and our people. We need a plan, and we need your input." Mark took a deep breath. This was no longer a test. It was real. He surveyed the holographic projections, analyzing the fleet's movement patterns, energy pulses, and formation. He realized immediately that traditional Zytheran defenses, swift and precise, but rigid, might not be enough. They relied on predictable coordination, whereas these attackers moved in erratic, unpredictable ways. "Listen," Mark said, pointing at the projection. "Their movements are fast, but not entirely random. They follow a pattern influenced by energy bursts. If we can predict the bursts, we can position your defenses where they'll be most effective." Lyra's eyes widened. "Do you mean our guards cannot act in time?" Mark shook his head. "Not exactly. They act well, but they're used to steady rhythms. We need to adjust their response using your energy pulses and my calculations." It's teamwork, the council murmured among themselves. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked skeptical. Lyra stepped forward, giving him an encouraging glance. They will listen to you, she said. They trust me. They trust you now, too. Mark felt a surge of determination. All right, he said. First, we need to split their formations into zones. Each zone responds to a different energy frequency. Then, we can coordinate the Scytheran defenses using pulse timing that syncs with the incoming fleet's movement. They won't expect it, because no Scytheran has tried this approach before. Tira, the tall turquoise Scytheran, floated closer. We do not understand fully, but we trust your insight. Show us how. Mark worked quickly, demonstrating a sequence of hand gestures and signaling patterns to coordinate the defenders. It was complicated timing the energy pulses with the attackers' patterns, instructing the Scytherans to move in ways they had never moved before. For a moment, Mark worried it was impossible, that his human ideas were too strange for them to follow. But Lyra's encouraging smile and the tentative movements of Tira's group gave him hope. Focus on rhythm, not force, Mark reminded them. Move with the pulse, not against it. Predict the gaps. That is where we strike. Minutes later, the attackers reached Scythera's atmosphere. The floating gardens shimmered with protective energy fields, and the Scytheran defenders positioned themselves according to Mark's instructions. The first wave of enemy vessels surged forward, faster and darker than anything Mark had imagined. He held his breath as the energy fields pulsed, timed perfectly with the enemy's movement patterns. The attackers struck, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the defenders responded in perfect harmony, blocking the first vessels and redirecting their energy. Mark's heart raced as he watched the next wave. Some vessels broke formation, forcing split-second decisions. But because he had predicted the bursts and timed the defenses, the Scytherans adapted quickly. Step by step, pulse by pulse, they managed to hold back the attackers. Lyra hovered beside him, her glowing skin flickering with pride. You see? You're thinking. It works. Humans can do things we cannot even imagine. Mark allowed himself a small smile. But he didn't relax. The fleet was massive, and they would not stop easily. He adjusted his commands, redirecting energy pulses, signaling Scytheran defenders to new positions. His mind raced, calculating patterns, anticipating enemy movement, improvising in real time. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The battle was a blur of light, sound, and motion. Mark could see small groups of attackers trying to bypass the defenses, but the coordinated pulse timing allowed the Scytherans to intercept every vessel. He noticed Lyra directing smaller groups, her gestures precise, her timing perfect. Together, human intuition and Scytheran discipline created a strategy neither could achieve alone. Finally, the enemy fleet faltered. Their formations broke, their movements erratic. With a final surge of coordinated energy pulses, the defenders pushed the attackers back beyond Scythera's borders. The floating gardens shimmered, safe once more. Mark sank to the ground, exhausted but exhilarated. He could hardly believe what had just happened. For the first time, he had led not just in theory, but in reality, against a tangible threat, and they had succeeded. Lyra floated down beside him, her smile wide and bright. You see now why humans are important, she said softly. Your thinking, your courage, it saved us today. Mark shook his head, still catching his breath. I didn't do it alone. I had you. I had Tira. I had the others. We did it together. True, Lyra said. But it started with your perspective. Without it, the outcome would have been different. Humans see possibilities we cannot. That is why I chose you. Mark felt a warmth in his chest. It was more than pride. It was a deep, unshakable sense of belonging. For the first time, he truly felt part of Scythera. Not just as a visitor or a student, but as a trusted partner. The council of guides approached, their many eyes gleaming with approval. They did not speak in words, but their gestures and hums conveyed respect, acknowledgement, and gratitude. Mark realized that in their own way, they were formally recognizing him as part of their society. "You have learned more than we expected," Tira said, extending a limb in a gesture of respect. "You have proven your value not by strength, but by mind and heart. You are one of us now. Tira, one of us." Mark smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment he had never known. He looked at Lyra, who returned his gaze with a quiet, knowing smile. "Your journey is far from over," she said. "But today, you have truly shown what it means to be my husband. Not just a title, but a partnership that can shape the future." As the sun set over Zythera, casting long shadows over the floating gardens, Mark reflected on the day. He had faced a real threat, led alien defenders, and succeeded through human ingenuity and teamwork. He realized that humans creative, adaptive, unpredictable, could thrive even in a galaxy filled with beings far more advanced or physically capable. Lyra floated beside him as they watched the horizon, her eyes glowing softly. "Tomorrow, you will meet others like you," she said. "Humans, perhaps, or beings from other worlds. And you will show them the strength of your species." Mark nodded, feeling both anticipation and excitement. The challenges ahead would be greater. But he had proven to himself, and to Zythera, that humanity had a place among the stars. And more importantly, he had proven that he could rise to any occasion, not just as a human, but as a trusted partner. A bridge between worlds, and a symbol of hope. As night fell over the floating gardens, Mark felt a calm resolve settle over him. He was no longer just a visitor. He was a part of Zythera. He was Lyra's husband in name, yes. But more than that, he was a force for cooperation, creativity, and trust. And tomorrow, the real adventure would begin. The day after the attack felt different on Zythera. The floating gardens shimmered brighter than before, and the air carried a calm, steady rhythm, as if the planet itself was breathing in relief. Mark stood quietly on a high platform overlooking the city, watching Zytherans move about their daily lives. They were repairing structures, restoring energy paths, and gathering in small groups, their movements relaxed and confident again. Lyra stepped closer and extended her hand. Mark took it without hesitation. This time, the contact felt natural, steady, and warm. From that moment on, things began to change. In the days that followed, communication between Earth and Zythera deepened. Mark worked closely with both Zytheran guides and human diplomats. Where Zytherans thought in patterns and harmony, humans brought flexibility and improvisation. Where humans struggled with patience, Zytherans offered long vision and balance. Mark became a translator of more than language. He explained emotions, intentions, and misunderstandings before they could grow. Small problems were solved early. Trust grew. One evening, Mark sat with Lyra near the edge of a floating lake, its surface reflecting the stars above. "Do you ever regret choosing me?" he asked. Lyra tilted her head. He smiled. She laughed softly. "Then humanity is rare and valuable." Not all challenges disappeared. There were debates, misunderstandings, moments when old habits clashed with new ideas. But each time, cooperation won. Humans learned to slow down. Zytherans learned to take risks. Together, they became something stronger. One day, a small group of Zytherans asked Mark to teach them human problem-solving games. Another day, humans tried Zytheran pattern meditation. Struggling at first, but slowly improving. Laughter became common. Curiosity replaced fear. Weeks later, A new message arrived from beyond Zythera's borders. It was not a threat, but a question. Other species had noticed the cooperation between a young human race and an ancient world. They wanted to understand how it worked. Mark stood before the council again. "We don't need to impress them," he said. "We just need to be honest. Show them what cooperation looks like." The council agreed. When the visitors arrived, they did not see weapons or displays of power. They saw shared spaces, mixed teams, and open discussion. They saw humans listening instead of demanding. They saw Zytherans adapting instead of resisting. And they were surprised. Lyra watched Mark as he spoke with the visitors, calm and thoughtful. She remembered the moment she had first seen him awkward, unsure, yet curious. She had smiled then, trusting her instinct. She smiled now, knowing she had been right. On the final day of the gathering, Mark stood with Lyra beneath a sky full of stars. "I never expected any of this," he said quietly. "Neither did we," Lyra replied. "But sometimes the universe moves through unexpected choices." Mark looked out at Zythera, at the floating gardens, the glowing paths, the people who now felt like family. "Do you think humanity is ready for what comes next?" Lyra considered this. "You are not perfect, but you are willing to change. That is enough." Mark nodded. He knew humans would make mistakes. They always did. But he also knew they would keep trying. As night settled, the lights of Zythera pulsed gently, not as a defense, but as a celebration. Mark felt a quiet pride, not in himself alone, but in what humans represented. They were not the strongest. They were not the oldest. They were not the most advanced. But they learned. They adapted. They cared. And sometimes, that was enough to change the galaxy. Lyra leaned closer, her smile warm and knowing. "You are my husband," she said again, softly this time. Mark smiled back. "Then I'll do my best to live up to it." Above them, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was watching and approving. The story of humanity among the stars had only just begun.